Welcome back to the channel where I provide regular cricket content on interesting topics. Today's video is an interesting one where I compile a world, all-time Test 11, of purely underrated players. These are the players which I think unfairly fly under the radar and deserve credit for their performances over time. Before I start, one ground rule in that I am going to deliberately not include anyone I had in my top 5 underrated players previously. I want to showcase a fresh group of players who I believe deserve more credit. Here goes with my Test 11, in batting order. Number 1, Simon Katich. It is pretty easy to pick underrated players from the Australian team of the last 25 years. This is due to the fact there were so many stars who shone so brightly that there were a number of players left in the shade. For me, Simon Katich is one of those players. The left-hander actually started out against England at Headingley in August 2001, as a number 6. With an unconventional style and a roll-up-your-sleeves approach, Simon Katich proved you don't have to be fashionable to be successful. When the Western Australian was moved up to the top of the order for the second half of his career, he had huge success. He ended making almost 3,000 runs including 800s in his new role. With an opening average of 50.5, he is in illustrious company with greats like Gavaskar, Hayden and Sehwag averaging over 50. But yet, even with those stats, he is hardly ever mentioned in the conversations about those dominant Aussie sides. For that reason I think he is vastly underrated, and deserves his opening spot on this team. Number 2, Marcus Trescothick. A brutal left-handed opening batsman, Marcus Trescothick was one of the finest opening batsmen to play for England. But due to his quiet personality and the general avoidance of being in the public eye, I think his achievements go generally unrecognised. He was an automatic choice from the turn of the century, until a stress-related illness intervened and forced his early retirement in 2008. In Johannesburg in 2004-05, he set up England's series victory with a brutal 180 on the final morning and would go on to have an excellent 2005 Ashes. Overall as an opener, Trescothick scored nearly 6,000 runs at an average of 43.8, at a good pace too. Although unheralded, he is a worthy addition to open with Katich in this underrated 11. Number 3, Stephen Fleming. Fleming is the definition of underrated in my books, as he is almost never talked about among New Zealand's greatest. In fact, with me being the village idiot that I am, I didn't even include him in my all-time 11 video. Not even as an afterthought. But I am correcting that wrong in this underrated 11, by having Fleming fill the difficult number 3 position. Thankfully this is the position in which Fleming had the majority of his success. He batted at 3 for 43 test matches, and averaged an excellent 47.3 including 600s. The silky left-hander would also captain my side, with him being an excellent tactician and a calming influence on the team. Number 4, Mohammed Yusuf. If I were to stop 100 cricket fans in the street and ask them who has scored the most test runs in a calendar year, who would they say? Some would say Bradman, some would say Tendulkar, some would say Lara. But unless they were a Pakistan fan or a cricket nerd like me, I doubt any would say the massively underrated Mohammed Yusuf. However, it is indeed Yusuf who holds that record. In 2006 over 11 tests, he scored 1,788 runs with 900s, breaking Sir Viv Richards' 30-year-old record. He wasn't a one-and-done player either. Yusuf had a tremendous career which could be compared to almost any great in the game. Overall he scored 7,500 runs at an average of 52.3. Cynics would point to his home record being much better than his away, and while that is true he still averaged over 50 in England and New Zealand. In summary, Yusuf was two things: firstly a fantastic batsman and secondly, very underrated. So he is a welcome number 4 in my batting lineup. Number 5, Rowan Kanhai. We're going back in time now for our number 5 and someone who absolutely deserves his seat at this underrated table. When you think of West Indian batsmen your mind automatically wanders to Viv Richards, Garfield Sobers, Clive Lloyd and Brian Lara. But there was another world-class middle-order batsman who paved the way for those that followed, and his name was Rowan Kanhai. Kanhai started his career way before what many believe was the revolution of West Indies cricket, making his debut in 1957. It took him 13 test matches to score a century, but it was worth the wait as he went big, scoring 256 versus India. For the next 15 years he was a linchpin in the West Indian batting lineup, and retired with a test average of 47.5. Such was his ability that the great Sunil Gavaskar named his first son Rowan. If that's not a good enough reference, I don't know what is. Number 6, Ross Taylor. The more I research for this team, the more I realize how underrated the Kiwis are in general. Take Ross Taylor for example. 7,600 runs at an average of 45, but he barely gets a mention when talking about the best bats of his era. In Test cricket, a career-best 290 came against Australia in Perth in late 2015, and in 2019 Taylor added a third double century to his tally with 200 against Bangladesh. Ross went about his business in an understated but ruthlessly effective manner, and was a true asset to New Zealand during his time in the side. Although he batted at 5 for the majority of his career, he can slot in at 6 to bolster my batting. Number 7, Dinesh Chandamal. There will be a certain number of viewers who are wondering who on earth I am talking about here. For that reason alone, Chandamal is a worthy addition to keep wicket in this underrated side. Dinesh Chandamal is an excellent wicket-keeper batsman, who in 74 Test matches has scored 1400s and has an average of just under 45. To put that into perspective, Adam Gilchrist hit 1700s in 96 Test matches. The Sri Lankan is about 300 runs short of Gilchrist's run tally and has played 22 less Test matches. Those who know Chandamal, however, will rightfully point out that he only keeps about half the time. But still, he is a proper player who flies under the radar, and is worth his spot in my side. Number 8, Jason Holder. Despite the well-documented struggles of the West Indies Test side, they are still occasionally introducing world-class players. Jason Holder is one of those such players. I would describe Holder as a bowling all-rounder, but frankly any side in the world would be happy for him to come in at number 8. Holder's potential was identified early by Clive Lloyd, who made him captain of the one-day team at just 23. Although not express pace, the 6 feet 7 inches Barbadian can extract good bounce and rarely gives bad balls away. Batting-wise, I remember his maiden Test century in 2015 against England in a difficult position, and I knew the West Indies had a star on their hands. He averages 28 with the ball and just under 30 with the bat, whilst having the pressure of being the leading player in the side. Underrated and very talented, Holder makes my team. Number 9, Yazir Shah. A wicket-taker in every sense of the word, Yazir Shah had to be patient before being given his opportunity to represent Pakistan. It was 9 years after his first-class debut and he was only drafted in as a short-notice replacement for Saeed Ajmal. But he took his opportunity with both hands and was immediately subject to some serious praise from leg-spinning royalty. Shane Warne identified his talent, praising his energy and shape on the ball, also his over-spinner and patience. Shah would reward these plaudits by taking wickets at a staggering rate. Most would assume it's Waqar Younis who took 50 wickets quickest for Pakistan. No, it's Shah. He actually became the joint fastest to 100 wickets of all time, and the fastest to 200 out of any cricketer to ever play the game. But still, he is hardly mentioned, so for that reason Yazir Shah is my spinner in this underrated 11. Number 10, Ryan Harris. Ryan Harris is one of those bowlers who came into the international scene quite late in his career. This was partly, of course, due to the strength of the Australian bowling options, but for me it has left Harris as vastly underrated. The big South Australian was nicknamed Rhino, due to his hulking frame and power. It was an apt nickname, however, as during a short Test career he ran through a number of good teams. He finished his Test career with 113 wickets at 23.5, including taking 8 wickets in a man-of-the-match performance versus England in Sydney. Despite a stellar record and some excellent performances, Harris is rarely mentioned, therefore he is a perfect fit for my underrated 11. Number 11, Colin Croft. It was actually Colin Croft who was the catalyst for me making this list. I was researching him for another video and it made me recognize what an excellent bowler he was. Croft, however, gets lost in the background due to so many West Indian great fast bowlers. Not only was Croft good, he had a mean streak also. A West Indian teammate once said about Croft that he would bounce his grandmother if there was a wicket in it, and I think that is a good analogy. Not one ever too far from controversy, Croft once steamrolled an umpire he happened to have a disagreement with. But mean streak and controversy aside, Croft was an excellent bowler, taking 125 wickets at 23 before famously abandoning his chance to represent West Indies by going on a rebel tour of South Africa. All in all, it left Croft with almost a half-done career, but a very underrated one at that. That wraps up my underrated 11, with a mix of players from eras and countries. What struck me was the lack of Indians in the side. Who have I missed? Some people think that Laxman was underrated, but he probably has more fans than any Englishman who has ever lived. What about Dilip Vengsarkar? Is he underrated? Or is there anyone else who needs adding? Make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments and tell me what you think of my side. Thanks as always for watching and participating.